Hello, Fred.
Hello, Woody. Goodbye, Woody.
Sanford and Son was not only a hit sitcom of the 1970s, but also an icon of American pop culture. Inside a junk shop in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles, Fred and Lamont made tens of millions of viewers laugh every week with their sharp-tongued, witty banter. Yet that bright light only reflected half the story. Behind the scenes where the audience never looked, there were tense stares, harsh exchanges, and relationships broken beyond repair. Shortly before his death, Redd Foxx, the soul of the show, revealed a list of 5 colleagues he claimed he could never stand. What turned a comedy legend into someone who carried bitterness to the very end? And how did those hidden resentments change the way we see Sanford and Son? Don't miss out, hit follow to uncover the full truth behind this legendary sitcom. From trash to television legend. The spotlight on stage was only a small slice of Redd Foxx's life. To understand why he could make all of America laugh while leaving behind a list of people he openly despised, we have to look beyond the set of Sanford and Son. That story begins far from the cameras on the impoverished streets of St. Louis, where a boy named John Elroy Sanford once rummaged through garbage for food. It was this harsh beginning that forged the sharp-edged personality and bitter humor that audiences would later come to know so well. The journey from destitute child to the king of black sitcoms reads like a real-life novel, with every page marked by poverty, resilience, and a rebellion against injustice. Born in 1922 in St. Louis, Missouri, with the birth name John Elroy Sanford, Redd Foxx grew up in a world where struggle and hardship were the norm. His father left when he was just 4, leaving his mother and 2 brothers to scrape by. Young John often dug through trash bins looking for something to eat, surviving on stale bread and spoiled milk. But from those very garbage piles, dismissed by most, sprouted the seed of a rough, unyielding kind of comedy, unafraid to speak the harshest truths. Later, when he became known as the king of the party records, Foxx would often say, "I learned to laugh from hunger and humiliation." As a teenager, Foxx dropped out of school and left Chicago for Harlem, New York, a vibrant haven of jazz smoky clubs and a growing community of black artists hungry to be heard. There, he befriended Malcolm Little, later known as Malcolm X. The two worked odd jobs in kitchens washing dishes to survive. Malcolm X would later write in his autobiography that Foxx, then nicknamed Chicago Red, was the funniest dishwasher on earth. It wasn't just a joke. It was a testament that Foxx brought laughter even into life's darkest corners. His artistic path began on the Chitlin Circuit, a network of small theaters catering to black audiences throughout the East and South. On dusty stages, Foxx performed biting routines about sex, marriage, politics, the kind of material most comics wouldn't dare touch. His party record sold over 10 million copies throughout the 1950s and 60s, an astounding figure at a time when black entertainers were still largely shut out of the mainstream. Foxx's comedy was raw and vulgar, but it spoke directly to the lives of his audience. And that honesty was what drew people in. During his years as a touring performer, Foxx met and toured with Slappy White, later moving into Las Vegas bars, where he began to draw the attention of white entertainment circles. With appearances on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, and other TV shows, he started gaining national recognition. Still, his biggest break came in 1972, when NBC was casting a new sitcom produced by Norman Lear Sanford and Son. From the very first episodes, the character Fred G. Sanford made a powerful impression. The grumpy yet funny junk dealer in Watts, Los Angeles, came across as sharp-tongued but deeply caring toward his son Lamont. Audiences laughed every time Fred barked, "You big dummy," or faked a heart attack with the iconic line, "This is the big one." Elizabeth. The authenticity came from Foxx himself, a man who had lived in poverty, and understood how working-class black Americans met life's hardships with humor. After just 1 season, Sanford and Son ranked in the top 10 most-watched shows in America. By season 2, it climbed to second place, just behind All in the Family, drawing weekly audiences of over 30 million. Throughout its 6 seasons, the show never left the top 30. This success elevated Foxx to national stardom and paved the way for later black sitcoms like Good Times and The Jeffersons. For the first time, a working-class black family was portrayed on television, with relatable humor breaking away from rigid stereotypes that had long dominated the screen. Behind the laughter, however, were fierce battles. Foxx discovered he was earning only $19,000 per episode, far less than Carol O'Connor of All in the Family, despite the 2 shows pulling in similar viewership. Feeling disrespected, Foxx walked off set midway through season 3 in 1974 to demand better pay. His request, $25,000 per episode and 25% of profits, was met with harsh resistance from NBC, who even sued him for $10 million. The bitter standoff lasted for months, and in the end, the network gave in. Foxx won the battle, but the victory left cracks in his relationships with producers, writers, and co-stars. He was also unafraid to challenge scripts he believed lacked cultural authenticity. In one episode, writers had Fred play Monopoly and joke that this is the only way a black man can own a railroad. Foxx rejected the scene outright. Black people don't play that game, cut the whole bit. His firm stance irritated the creative team, but it also preserved Sanford and Son's authentic tone and lasting resonance. The massive success of Sanford and Son catapulted Redd Foxx from nightclub comic to TV star, one of the first black entertainers to demand equal pay with his white counterparts in Hollywood. But fame came at a steep price. Financial disputes, creative tensions, and a breakdown in communication left deep fractures behind the scenes. Foxx's life continued its downward spiral due to failed marriages, extravagant spending habits, and tax debts that eventually totaled millions. In 1989, the IRS seized all his possessions, cars, jewelry, even his home. A man who had once earned tens of millions from stage and screen was left with nothing. Yet even in failure, Foxx remained defiant. He returned to small shows, made appearances in several TV projects, and in 1991, CBS gave him a chance to return with the sitcom The Royal Family. During promotional interviews, Foxx beamed with optimism, saying, "I still have a lot to give." No one could have predicted that just days later during a rehearsal, he would collapse from a real heart attack, a cruel irony after years of pretending to clutch his chest and fall for laughs. He died at 68, leaving behind profound sorrow and a comedic legacy that remains unmatched. Redd Foxx rose from the garbage heaps of St. Louis to the heights of American television, wielding laughter as a weapon against injustice, prejudice, and lifelong contempt. He left behind not just jokes, but a lasting lesson that even someone from the lowest rung of society can force the world to listen. Yet the conflicts, silent feuds, and the infamous list of those he couldn't stand are also inseparable from the Redd Foxx story, an unexpected part of his life we are about to uncover. And first on that list is none other than Demond Wilson, the actor who played Lamont, the beloved son, on screen, but in real life the deepest wound in Redd Foxx's heart. Demond Wilson, the on-screen son and the fractured father-son bond in real life. In the history of American television, few duos captured audiences quite like Fred Sanford and his son Lamont in Sanford and Son. Fred, the grumpy old man, always grumbling and faking heart attacks with the catchphrase, "This is the big one." Elizabeth became a familiar figure in living rooms across the country. Beside him was Lamont, the calm, patient young man constantly trying to keep both the junk business and their little household from falling into chaos. The chemistry between Redd Foxx and Demond Wilson was so seamless that viewers believed they must be just as close in real life as they were on screen. But the glow of the studio lights only told one side of the story. Behind the scenes, that relationship slowly fractured, leaving behind a deep wound that would never heal. The turning point came in 1974 when Redd Foxx abruptly walked off the set to negotiate a new contract with NBC. He demanded a pay raise from $19,000 to $25,000 per episode and 25% of the show's profits, a bold move that threw the entire production into turmoil. The person most affected was Demond Wilson. There was no message, no private conversation. Wilson only learned the news through an NBC staffer. That moment, as he later recounted, felt like a knife to the heart. What hurt me the most wasn't that he left it, was that he didn't say a word to me. For Wilson, the father-son bond so vividly portrayed on screen had been overshadowed by a painful silence off it. From then on, the distance between them only grew. After Sanford and Son ended in 1977, Wilson walked away from the spin-off Sanford Arms over financial disagreements. When Fox attempted to reboot the series with Sanford in 1980, Wilson declined to return, stating that once trust is gone, there's nothing left to build on. The only attempt at reconciliation came in 1983 during a private meeting. But the one thing Wilson was waiting for, an apology, never came. He left the room disappointed, and from that moment on, the two never spoke again. The estrangement became all the more bitter when Foxx died in 1991 from a real heart attack on the set of The Royal Family. Demond Wilson was notably absent from the funeral. When asked about it, Wilson, by then a pastor, simply said he had forgiven in his heart, but the wound from 1974 had never healed. It wasn't lingering anger, but an unnameable sadness, a void no one could fill. In the public eye, Fred and Lamont remain an immortal symbol of father-son love. Their passionate arguments, emotional reconciliations, and roaring laughter forever etched into television history. But for the two men behind those characters, the reality was far different. A broken relationship born in silence and ended in permanent distance. That is why Demon Wilson became the first name on the list of colleagues whom Red Fox carried with lifelong bitterness, not because they hated each other from the start, but because their closeness had once been real, and thus the betrayal cut the deepest. For Foxx, walking away in 1974 was just one move in a larger battle for survival against an unjust television system. For Wilson, it was a betrayal by someone he had seen as a father. Each perspective carries its own truth, and perhaps it was that very difference that made it impossible for their on-screen bond to be mirrored in real life. The lingering question is this: in the glittering glow of Hollywood, are real relationships always more fragile than audiences believe? And from that first fracture, the list of names that Red Fox never forgot slowly began to take shape. Nancy Culp, the unexpected name on Red Fox's list of grudges. Following Demon Wilson. The next name to appear on Red Fox's list of people who left him bitter came as a surprise: Nancy Culp. She was best known for her role as Jane Hathaway on The Beverly Hillbillies, a prim, intellectual woman with a gently humorous charm. Culp also appeared on Sanford and Son as a guest star, playing the minor fleeting role of May Hopkins. But in Fox's memory, that appearance was anything but fleeting. It was tied to a tension he could never quite shake off. Foxx rarely spoke about this during the height of his career. It was only in the final years of his life that he vaguely referenced an old secret involving Culp stemming from an encounter in Las Vegas in 1968. He never shared the full story, but the way he hinted at it was enough for fans and the press of the time to speculate that it was an experience he carried with bitterness. Some sources suggest it may have been a brief but misunderstood conversation. Others theorize that the conflict could have arisen from the social prejudices of the time, an era when race, gender, and even sexual orientation were under relentless scrutiny. Nancy Culp, a private person, later ran for Congress in 1984, but never spoke openly about her personal life. That silence only deepened the mystery surrounding Fox's veiled remarks. Interestingly, to her colleagues, Culp projected an entirely different image. Eddie Albert, her co-star on Green Acres, once praised her as one of the most charming television actors I've ever known. Within the industry, she was remembered as an intelligent, witty, kind woman who was widely admired. That made her inclusion on Fox's list all the more puzzling. Did he in a fleeting moment perceive some form of contempt? Or was it that after years of being marginalized, he had grown hypersensitive to any sign of disrespect or injustice? From another angle, some critics believe that Red Fox, driven by fierce instincts and raw emotion, was prone to holding on to small slights, real or imagined, and allowing them to grow into long-standing resentment. His view of Culp may not have reflected who she truly was, but rather his own inner state, a black artist raised in poverty, forever wary of the subtle signs of discrimination that had marked his life. Whatever the truth, Nancy Culp's name remains on Fox's list of grudges as an unresolved question. She passed away in 1991, the same year as Foxx, without ever addressing the matter, and no one has stepped forward to clarify it. Was it simply a minor misunderstanding that time amplified into something larger, or was there truly a hidden rift that both chose never to reveal? That question still hangs unanswered. And from that shadowy, elusive figure, the story now turns to someone deeply entwined with Foxx, over decades a co-star who was both confidant and fierce rival: Slappy White. Slappy White, the soulmate who became a rival in Red Fox's life. If Nancy Culp was a fleeting, mysterious presence on Red Fox's list, then Slappy White was a name bound tightly to both his career and personal life. The two met in Harlem in 1947, when Foxx was still struggling to find his footing in the comedy world. They quickly became a dynamic duo, performing across the small stages of the Chitlin circuit. Audiences of the time still remember the name Red Fox and Slappy White on posters promising routines that were rough around the edges but full of vitality. They shared cheap train rides, humble meals, and a dream of one day escaping the cramped bar scene. Through the 1950s and 1960s, both began to break through. Foxx sold millions of party records while Slappy White became a regular guest on major television shows. But as their stars rose, the distance between them grew clearer. Two strong personalities, two big egos constantly clashing. On one occasion, in a moment of rage, Foxx even threatened to kill Slappy, a clearly exaggerated remark, but one that reflected the intensity of their dynamic. They broke off contact, reunited, fell out again, a relationship resembling a marriage in constant cycles of love and estrangement. Still, their brotherly bond never fully disappeared. In 1977, when Foxx was given the chance to host his own show on ABC, the Red Fox Comedy Hour, he immediately invited Slappy White to be a regular guest. The decision surprised many, but it also showed that Foxx could never completely turn his back on his old friend. Unfortunately, the show was short-lived, and once again their friendship fell into a familiar pattern of misunderstandings and distance. What made Slappy White special was that he wasn't just a colleague, he was a mirror reflecting the rebellious side of Foxx. They loved each other like brothers, and competed like rivals, often to the point of betrayal. Some in the industry described their relationship with the phrase love-hate, where laughter and anger always walked hand in hand. And perhaps it was this extreme closeness that made every argument leave a scar too deep to fade. In their later years, the two managed to reconcile, at least in part, but the closeness was never quite the same. Slappy White later reflected Red was a genius, but with genius comes storms. That statement felt like both praise and reproach. Was it Foxx's fiery nature and enormous ego that caused him to see Slappy more as a rival than a partner? Or was it simply the way two artists too similar in spirit struggled to make room for each other? Whatever the answer, Slappy White remained a uniquely complex figure in Red Fox's life, a soulmate whose friendship could turn to animosity in an instant. And from these clashes with a fellow performer, Foxx's resentment slowly turned toward more powerful targets, the producers behind Sanford and Son, the ones he believed had used him as a tool for profit. Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin, the power players, behind the spotlight. After Slappy White. No list of the names that Red Fox carried bitter resentment toward would be complete without mentioning Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin. These were the powerful producers behind a string of hit sitcoms in the early 1970s, including All in the Family and Sanford and Son. They were the ones who saw potential in Foxx, cast him in the lead role of Sanford and Son, and also became the central figures in the long, grueling battles Foxx endured throughout his years at NBC. The height of the conflict came in 1974. Foxx discovered he was being paid $19,000 per episode, significantly less than Carol O'Connor of All in the Family, who earned $25,000 per episode, despite both shows drawing comparable audiences. Foxx felt devalued. His demand for higher pay and 25% of the show's profits was flatly rejected. Outraged, he walked off the set, leaving a void so large that NBC had to write a script explaining that Fred Sanford was away due to a family funeral. Meanwhile, Lear and Yorkin didn't back down. They sued Foxx for $10 million for breach of contract. The standoff dragged on for months, ultimately ending in Foxx's favor when the producers relented and agreed to his financial terms. That victory made Foxx one of the rare black entertainers of the time who dared to challenge the American television system and won. But triumph did not erase the damage. His relationship with Lear and Yorkin remained tense, marked by quiet resentment. Foxx did not hide his contempt, once saying they treated him like numbers on a spreadsheet, not as an artist who gave the show its soul. In his eyes, they symbolized a Hollywood that valued profit over people, obsessed with ratings and ad revenue with no regard for the emotional lives of its performers. Creative disagreements only deepened the divide. Foxx frequently rejected scripts, believing the white writers failed to grasp black culture. Each time he pushed back, Lear and Yorkin viewed it as defiance, while Foxx saw them as overbearing bosses trying to dictate his voice. The set, instead of being filled with laughter, was often taut with tension. When Sanford and Son ended in 1977, Foxx quickly accepted an offer from ABC to host his own show, leaving behind Lear Yorkin, and a series of spin-off projects that never succeeded. In Foxx's mind, these two producers always represented the injustice he had to fight. They gave him the opportunity to become a star, but at the same time made him feel exploited and disrespected. Did that bitterness stay with him until the end of his life? Or were Lear and Yorkin merely symbols of a larger system that Foxx had to confront to preserve his dignity? That question remains unresolved. From clashes with co-stars to the love-hate bond with his longtime friend Slappy White, and then the battles with powerful producers, Foxx's list of resentments kept expanding. And the tragedy reached its peak in his final years when he returned to television in the royal family, only to face a cold and indifferent production team. That painful experience closed the circle of anger and disillusionment that defined so much of his life. The royal family and the producers, who sent Red Fox off in bitterness. When NBC and Sanford and Son had become nothing more than a memory, Red Fox never stopped seeking a way back. After years buried in debt and performing on small-time stages, CBS offered him a lead role in a new sitcom, The Royal Family, in 1991, starring alongside Della Reese. It was seen as the beginning of a grand comeback for a legend. Foxx was full of hope, smiling in interviews, and declaring that he still had so much more to give. But just weeks later, that hope was crushed by a tragedy no one saw coming. During a rehearsal while Foxx was giving an interview with Entertainment Tonight, a producer suddenly interrupted and demanded that he leave immediately to rehearse a scene, one with no dialogue, simply requiring him to walk across the stage. A stand-in actor was already available, but the request was made anyway, as if to assert dominance. Foxx, furious, stepped onto the stage, visibly angry. Just minutes later, he clutched his chest and collapsed in front of the entire crew. Many laughed, thinking he was once again mimicking Fred Sanford's famous fake heart attack, but Della Reese instantly recognized that this was real. Foxx gasped for his wife, then lost consciousness. 4 hours later, the hospital confirmed he had died of a heart attack at the age of 68. What pained Della Reese and many others who witnessed it even more was the reaction of the two producers present at the hospital. As soon as the doctor announced that Red Fox had passed, they turned to each other and asked, "So, who's going to read Red's lines? How are we going to handle the script?" Reese, enraged by their indifference, shouted in their faces and walked away from the show forever. To her, Fox's death wasn't just about illness. It was the culmination of a lifetime of disrespect, from the days of Sanford and Son to what was supposed to be his final chance at redemption. That moment closed a cycle of bitterness. An artist who had fought for years to be seen as a human being was in the end still treated as nothing more than a line item in the shooting schedule. The image of producers coldly discussing replacements beside a hospital bed became the final proof of everything Foxx had despised about Hollywood. Its callousness, its treatment of actors as disposable assets. And with that, the list of names he carried with lifelong bitterness came to a tragic close. The question left for posterity is, was Red Fox's death merely a sudden heart attack? Or was it also the result of a lifetime spent being disrespected, a lifetime battling people who never truly saw him with dignity? His personal conflicts with Demond Wilson, Nancy Culp, and Slappy White may have stemmed from fractured affection, but his battles with Norman Lear Bud Yorkin, and finally the production team of the royal family, were rooted in a cold system that placed profit above people. And this chain of tragedies shaped the image of a deeply complex Red Fox, at once humorous and bitter, pitiful and dignified. Red Fox turned suffering into art, leaving behind Sanford and Son as a golden milestone in American television. Yet behind that spotlight were grudges and scars that never healed with colleagues, with producers. He departed in bitterness, and yet his laughter remains immortal, making us wonder what is the true price of being a legend. What do you think? Share your thoughts and follow the channel to uncover more untold stories.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.